Good evening and welcome to Friday, June 30th, Gold Goats and Guns Hour. I'm Tom Luongo. Hope you're all good. Get this party started, shall we? Quite a week of, well, quite a week. I don't think there's any other. I think it's just that's the way things are. Good evening, Jen Johnson. How are you, love? Reminder to everybody, I am streaming this on both simulcast on both live on YouTube and on Periscope. So we'll be going back and forth. You can follow my work over at goldgoatsandguns.com. There are links below in the description of the video. You can also support my work over at Patreon by becoming a member and subscribing to the Gold Goats and Guns investment newsletter, where I tie all of this kind of geopolitics and all of this stuff, all of these cultural trends and everything else that I like to talk about on a daily basis, and give you a cogent investment strategy, a variety of, I think, pretty solid stock picks to build a portfolio around. All right. So, guys, I never thought I'd live to see the day. I mean, I really didn't ever think I would see this. John Bolton is a Kremlin stooge. I mean, John Bolton is now a Kremlin stooge. If you read, I was reading an article over at the Dern before I came. I'm like, I was thinking that this afternoon. I'm like, what am I going to write about? I mean, I've been writing, what am I going to talk about tonight? And like, I'm over at the Dern a couple of minutes ago. Like, I'll prep for the show. What am I going to write about tonight? Let's talk about tonight. Well, John Bolton, Kremlin stooge. Who knew? John Bolton, arch neocon. The guy we've been worried to death about, who's going to be the death of Iran and Russia and the entire world. According to American media, now works for the Kremlin. Because Trump sent him over there to plan a meeting. Buckman! How is everybody this evening? I just thought that was the funniest freaking thing. I've heard a lot of really funny stuff coming out of the Democrats in the last, and the media in the last few weeks, and it makes me laugh. I mean, all this stuff just makes me laugh at this point. And remember, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. I have to remind even I forget. I mean, it's been a tense couple of months with the way things have gone, but I mean, since North Korea, I really have to say that this shit's starting to get fun again. And, right. No, I'm serious. No, Buck, I get it. I'm beginning to have some fun with this again. Because it's been really obvious to me that for a while now. Now, I don't, Buck, I just don't truck in faith. Right? I'm not a faith kind of guy. I hate to say it, but I'm not a faith kind of guy. Those of you who have faith, great. But it's important to remember to have fun. I don't think Macedonia is all that important. I don't know. It's like Macedonia. They're going to add Macedonia to NATO. They're going to do whatever they want to do, but it's not going to ultimately matter, because the more I look forward, I think the upcoming NATO summit is going to be quite the affair. And I'm not sure quite how it's going to be an affair at this point. I just know that everything is pointing towards something large happening at the NATO. No, I still think I'm right about Al-Sharat. Dude, just because, I mean, seriously, just because we're to this point now does not mean that 16 months ago or 15 months ago that things could have gone completely differently. Let's not sit back here and pat ourselves on the back for being oh so fucking insouciant about this stuff. No. This could have gone completely differently. And it was very touch and go up until probably November. I don't need to go apeshit again. It's going to be fun now. Everything could have gone very, very differently, and we're very lucky that it's come out the way it has. I'm not trying to take anything away from how we got here, right? And nothing's been settled. So, but I just want to throw that out there that I'm going to talk about user 13. I'm going to get back to your comment about the U.S. pulling out of NATO and all that in just a minute. But I want to focus on why I think the whole thing about John Bolton being a Kremlin stooge is so great. I read at least 2 or 3 different articles today that I should have written, and kind of almost a little bit of professional jealousy. But one was about the utter loserdom that is the Never Trumper group and how badly it was in the American Conservative, I think. And then there's this article at the Durin, and it's very obvious to me because it's hitting on a lot of themes that I'm beginning to write about for this month's newsletter, and that the Democrats have become the party of Pat Buchanan's latest articles. The no party for old white men, but I think it's deeper than that. It's absolutely white people just don't apply, and we don't. They're going to become the party of the non-whites in America. How do I contain my enthusiasm? I mean, seriously. I mean, no offense to anybody, but the truth of the matter is that they're gonna do this. They're gonna rally around this 28-year-old know-nothing from Long Island, who didn't grow up in Long Island, who grew up in wherever the hell she grew up, beating the machine guy, whatever the hell his name was, Joe Crowley, right? So this Cortez woman is now the new face of the Democratic Party. No, she's the new face of Long Island. Okay. Just like Kamala Harris is the new face of what? Half of California. They don't represent America. And they don't represent a growing segment of America. And it's really important to understand that. The one who the girl who the young 28-year-old millennial who won Alexandria Cortez. All right, she's got a hyphenated name, but I remember Cortez. Who beat Joe Crowley, who was a machine Democrat from Long Island, and was actually in line to become Speaker of the House after Pelosi was finally put out the pasture. The woman presents like she's had multiple strokes or Alzheimer's. And Maxine Waters is they're rallying around the idea of how to see if they can build a. Well, it was the big news of the week. It was the big news that on Tuesday, doesn't matter that only 50,000 voted. Oh, it's socialist. She's not really on. So she reminds me too much of Hugh Aberdeen, right? And I don't think Hugh Aberdeen is not either. Read an article predicting 2020 win for full socialists. No way. I know she sounds like Chavez. She sounds like Bernie Sanders on steroids. She sounds like all of that stuff. They honestly think that the millennials are more socialist than they actually are. As a group, the millennials are very communitarian, but they're not very communist. There's a difference between those two things. And smart commies like her will dress up vile authoritarian communism or authoritarian socialism or whatever you want to call it. Well, she's better looking than Crowley, fine. As in communitarian talk. You've heard my rant about this in the past. I've always said that the biggest problem with libertarians and how they branded themselves, they've always branded themselves from here to the heart as opposed to from the heart back to the head. And meaning we don't do a very good job of explaining why individuality and why property rights and why celebrating the individual actually creates stronger communities and is actually very communitarian, is actually quite the argument for for libertarianism, or at least a libertarian view of the world, whether you want to go full, ANCAP is prerogative. And I think it's one of the reasons why I really like to see what's happening with Jordan Peterson, because what he's been doing is from a different perspective, from a different avenue, he's making that argument. Now he's coming from the psychology and the mythological stories and all of that stuff, and then drumming it down and making the incontrovertible case and conclusion that individualism is the path to a stable and healthy society. Well, young women generally are that way because it's the way they're programmed. I mean, it really is. And it's when they get older that, like, I don't know if you guys saw that. I don't know if you saw the thing from the BBC, but Tracy Ullman's been killing it. Do I like John Stossel? He's fine for what he is. I think he hasn't updated his shtick in 25 years. That's my problem with Stossel. I like Stossel. I just think he's kind of kept opposition. But if you watch some of the stuff that Tracy Ullman's been putting out via the BBC, and if you saw the overly woke support group video, if you haven't seen it, just go look this thing up. This thing is yeah, they're gonna do everything imaginable to detract from Peterson at this point, because the alt-right guys don't want him taking their thunder from them, and the left doesn't want him getting any bigger than he is, because he's deprogramming too many people. So that shit's really funny. Camille found it through Milo on Facebook, and she showed it to me, and I just spit my coffee across the room. And I was like, oh my god, water's racist. See, a line like that, I was telling Camille the other day, a line like that doesn't work without the London accent, right? It's like, I can't make that. We couldn't do that skit as Americans and make that work. You don't understand. It just won't work, right? Like, point where you remember, eventually you're going to believe that you'll come to some weird conclusion like that. Water's racist. Oh my god, is water racist? It doesn't work nearly as well as, oh my god, is water racist? It's just something about the way it works beautifully. So, so it is really funny, and you just gotta love it. And so so watching this play itself out, John Bolton is now a Kremlin stooge for having talked to the Russians, right? Well, he just got thrown out off of PayPal for saying something private that he wasn't supposed to say. Whatever. It is about the delivery, but it's also about the accent and the way that accent creates certain. It creates different. It creates a different comedy beat to it. British dry humor is just really, really funny. So it's one of the best things about Brits at this point. Kind of that and David Tennant, Doctor Who. So watching this just confirms for me that no matter what happens here, they're going to continue to double down and escalate on ideas that are not resonating with the center of the country at all. What do we see? That Trump's support amongst Hispanics went up 10 points in the last couple of weeks since the Democrats have been crying about children. This shit's not working. Now, it's just not working, and it's fantastic. And then to watch how the neocons and the never-Trumpers refuse to change their tune, and they're actually aligning themselves with these people. It ultimately proves everything that we expected to happen. I saw it first half. I saw it firsthand in 2008. I remember saying in 2008 that if Ron Paul gets to a point where he's a threat to John McCain in any primary, that the Republicans and the Democrats will align against him. And then we saw that for real in 2012. Yes, they're proving all of our points. We're absolutely right. So it's just making it easy at this point. For the midterms and then beyond. I mean, I fundamentally believe this. And every day we're like, we all want peace in the world, right? And these people are going out and saying unbelievably stupid shit. I mean, I should actually read you some of the stuff that RT quoted from American media. That was then quoted in the Durham, which is the article I read, about how now John Bolton went from being Mr. Uberhawk and death to Russia and all of this stuff, and now is like laughing with Putin, and they don't know what to do with themselves. I mean, they're like, what do I do? Like, guys, you were wrong. Yeah, well, it's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine. We were talking. Okay, so last week, the phrase "an unexamined life" is actually what comes up here. It has a little bit of drama. I'm going to divert here for a minute, but it's very indicative of what the white, supposedly woke middle class looks like. Okay? And I've got a lot of them here in Gainesville area, because all the white libs in this, they're all middle class. They're all white. They all live in burbclaves. They all drive new cars. Then none of them go to the east side of town. None of them send their kids to Lincoln High School. It's all nonsense, right? So listening to these people talk about this stuff, it's funny. So my daughter's been playing on a Wednesday night D&D game run by my friend George, for all the kids of these 3 different families, with my kid and his and a couple other kids, like 5 or 6 kids, all getting their first experience D&D. Now you can imagine what happens when you get 6 Aspie autistic kids in a room playing D&D with someone with adult supervision who believes firmly and letting them do whatever they're going to do. It's going to be a mess. The boys are going to take over and min-max everything. They're going to try and steal all the loot. They're all going to turn into greedy loot hoarders, and then the girls, they're going to stand there going, "But I thought we were a party, and I thought we were supposed to be working towards a common goal," right? And that's exactly the way things have played out. And my daughter knows how to play cooperative games because she's been playing cooperative games with Camille and I since she's 5 years old, right? And playing them at a very high level. And so what's funny is that my daughter, shock of shocks, when she gets frustrated, she gets rude. She also curses like a sailor. Which, while not, to her credit, but you understand the situation. We're like, Sophie, you can't act like that when you're over at Beth's house, right? You can't do that. Even though you're right to be frustrated by all this, you're not. That's just not the right way to handle the situation. The better way to handle the situation is to be the sneaky, ugly rogue that you are that you're supposed to be playing, and steal all their shit behind their back or stab them in the back in the middle of the combat. So as opposed to attacking the dragon that the stupid monk kicked in the face, you should stab him in the back after the dragon breathes on him and just make sure that he dies. And then take his stuff and go, "What? Wasn't me." And so that's what you should do. But whatever. So yeah, total rules lawyers, the whole 9 yards. And APs and alpha players telling everybody what to do and the whole 9 yards. It's just hasn't been a great scene. So, and then it's not supportive because it's D&D. You roll a 20-sided die, you roll less than a freaking 15, you miss, and your entire night is a whole bunch of that, right? And how many of us have played D&D and had an entire night where you didn't hit anything once or failed every saving throw or whatever? It's just it's a miserable experience, and it's one of the things I can't stand about that game is just the variance is too high, and it's certainly too high for me, and it's certainly too high for Sophie. She doesn't really like it very much, but she can make the rest of it work. But the moral of the story is, and I'm getting around to this, is that because things were getting ugly, we were getting feedback from George's wife, who's a friend of ours, from the other kids' moms who don't understand the dynamic, don't understand the situation at all, don't think that this is anything you care about. You see all these kids that have all of these anxieties and everything else. And they're, yelling at us that my daughter's acting inappropriate. Oh, fine, I'll take care of it. I can police that. That's fine. But never once did they think in terms of, well, how do you think we feel? How do you think it got to this point, right? And the one woman in particular, is thinking in terms of when she goes to the store, she's like wondering what the black person checking her out at Publix thinks of her. And she said something like, it was really like that she sees her as some kind of woke hippie chick. And my friend Tanya just looked at her and went, no. She sees you as an upper middle class white woman, snooty white woman. That's what she sees. And there's this tremendous unexamined portion of their life, and they don't get it. They don't see what they are or who they become. And I can tell you that that's endemic all across that part of the political spectrum. And those are the people who think that this strategy by the Democrats is going to work. They think they're so woke that this is the way everybody should be. And I don't have the heart to tell them, like, it's not going to work. I tell people who I know, I tell my friends who I'm much closer to than these particular people, I say, oh yeah, no, dude, you're so off the rails, it's not funny, and you need to get you need a sincere attitude adjustment really quick, because you have no idea what's actually out. Their echo chambers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's really funny. Yeah, I mean, the idea that this particular woman sees herself, thinks that she's projecting this image of, like, woke hippie chick. That is not the air you give off to anybody. You give off snooty upper middle class control freak white woman. That's your shtick. It's cool. I don't have a problem with that. And don't get me wrong, I like all these people. I don't happen to agree with them about everything, but for the most part, they're very good people and they mean well and all that. I don't have any. I have issues with them, but they have issues with me, so it's fair enough, right? Fair enough. I mean, no one's perfect, but it's just funny. But I can tell you flat out that Camille and I sit around and we look at each other all the time, going, "Are we doing this right?" I know how I come across when people see me. I come across as I know what I come across as, the domineering asshole. I get it. I know, and I do my very best not to come across that way, but it is who I am. So, right. And that was the phrase I was getting to, ultimately. User 13, who says that these folks have no idea what Socrates meant by an unexamined life is not worth living, or that he even said it. Sandy lives in California, and that's how everybody there thinks. I know, and that's the problem. And they really think that they're deep, but the problem is that their idea of an ocean is actually a tide pool, and it's a real shame. And it would be excusable if these were people that were still in their late 20s. And it was okay when I knew them and all their kids were toddlers, and all our kids were toddlers, and they were in their late 20s, and Camille and I happened to be in our late 30s. So, we have a different perspective, but, we're 40 now. Time to grow up. Time to, take a look in the mirror. What's going on? Really think that's the right way of going about things? Well, it is what it is. All right. So understand that this actually does tie back to this whole idea. And it's the same thing in Washington. Same thing in the swamp dwellers. It's the same thing and within the media, within all of these little enclaves. with all these little enclaves of people that they live in these. They're not just echo chambers. It's even deeper than that, right? They don't understand that there really is another world out there that's not them. So it's just pathetically sad. Now, the woman in question I'm talking about happens to be really hot, so it makes up for all. Oh my God, is that sexist? So yeah, so keep a smile on your face while you're watching this play itself out. All right. So the other pre-Trump Putin summit dividends, that title of the talk tonight, more than just that John Bolton is a Kremlin stooge. Never gets old saying that. Just never gets old. All right. Is we saw this is sexist, this is water is racist, right? Exactly. There's two, right? And the first one is what we talked about on Monday, that that we're getting out of the way of the Syrian army and the Russians and Hezbollah cleaning up southwestern Syria. As a matter of fact, I think they brokered a ceasefire or an armistice, effectively, because the SA and the Russians were just carving whole hunks of territory out in like days. It was like Russian cauldron after Russian cauldron after. It was stupid how quickly they were taking the whole thing back. And so I think I saw something out of Jordan today that they brokered effectively enough. Great, that's good. So, but that's to show you how quickly all this stuff clears up the minute the Americans get out of the way. No, they didn't renew the. I don't think they renewed the old ceasefire agreement. I think they went. I think it's bigger than that. It's actually calling for, because I mean, I've been reading stuff behind the scenes. There are groups, that are throwing down their arms left and right and being trucked out of the area and the whole 9 yards. So it's going to be, it's going to be taken care of pretty quickly here. And you'll notice that the Israelis aren't saying boo about any of that. That should tell you all you need to know. The Israelis aren't saying anything. Are we looking for troop reductions yet? Probably when Putin and Trump sit down to talk. We're going to talk about Al-Tanf, and then they're going to talk about Al-Tanf, and they're going to talk about what we're going to do what's going to happen in Deir ez-Zor, because that's really the biggest, right? The regime change operation in Turkey has failed. Erdogan's in power. He's made it abundantly clear that he will continue to buy Iranian oil. So will the Indians and many others. I could think that we'll see a couple more this time. The Chinese will buy a lot more Iranian oil than they have in the past. They'll just shift some of their buying away from the Saudis and towards the and that will help stabilize Iran. So user 13 asks, will the Jordanians and others start pushing to repatriate the Syrians in their territory sooner rather than later? I'd imagine so. That's ultimately what I think is going on here. There was the late afternoon agreement by the EU leaders over an immigration plan, and part of it had to do with Turkey shutting the flow of Syrians from Turkey off, and Turkey actually getting paid for some of their getting paid to basically bribe to not send them to Europe. So is Bolton a deep state war hawk? Bolton is the definition of war hawk and deep state. Yeah, absolutely. So having Trump send him as his errand boy to Putin and making him play nice really is quite a masterstroke of diplomacy. because the cognitive dissonance is insane. It's off the charts good, off the charts strong. So yeah, the hope is that you'd see Syrians be able to go home, and a lot of the ones that are in Turkey and Lebanon came out of Idlib, and Idlib is still a mess. But the quicker Daraa can be retaken, then that's one less front the Syrian army has to fight. Then they can move back up towards Idlib and Latakia, and all that's taken care of. And then, so they're not fighting a 4-front war, right? You want to, they were fighting a 6-front war, and now they're fighting a 4-front war. We get it down to a 3-front war, and the whole thing collapses very, very quickly. So, and I really do believe that. So, do we trust it? Here's the thing. I think you do. You have to trust it at this point, because I do believe that Trump is winning at a diplomatic level on foreign policy. I don't know that he's actually winning on actual policy yet. Okay? But I do. Well, why wouldn't I credit him with it? He does good things, William. William Justice is thanking me for crediting Trump. I'm like, I give him credit for shit all the time. I just don't give him a lot of credit on foreign policy, because most of his foreign policy has been dubious at best. Did I not give him massive credit for talking to North Korea? Yes. Did I want to give him the Nobel fucking Peace Prize? No. It's not a cult, okay? So so Cynical Skeptic is asking, how do you think Trump got to Bolton? He seems awfully cooperative. Bolton knows where his bread's buttered. He was sidelined over North Korea, over trying to scuttle North Korea peace talks. He wants to keep his job. Remember, Trump is winning domestically. Yeah, Green Penguin brings up this point. So he says maybe Bolton was an honest believer in neocon, but not as compromised so that Trump could actually work with him. That's been kind of the default position on Bolton for a while now. I know I've mentioned that kind of position in the past. I go back and forth as to whether it's reality or not. I'm certainly willing to entertain it. I think yes, Steph won't tell. Now he's not. Let's clarify. Okay, he did. I've been from the beginning. Have said that North Korea and South Korea are the ones driving the Korean peace talks, and that Trump is effectively along for the ride, because Kim's got has a nuclear weapon, and the South wants to reunify. So Trump needed a way out to save face. Fair enough. Okay, and he did. Where he's winning on North Korea is from a domestic perspective. Okay, because it's a foreign policy win for an American president to go and sit down with the North Korean president, the North Korean leader. Period. That's a win. Whether how much of a win you want to attribute to that, everybody's going to attribute more or less. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's a win, right? It doesn't matter that he won 1-0, or 5-0, or 5-3, or whatever the hell the final score is. It doesn't matter. A win's a win, right? Doesn't matter if it was a shootout victory. Win's a win. I don't see that Bolton was just the bad cop in North Korea. I don't. I think Bolton was actually honestly trying to scuttle those. Absolutely. I may be wrong, but I don't like to give John Bolton any credit where he doesn't deserve it. Of course it was more of a win for Kim than the U.S. I'm not talking about geostrategically here. I'm talking about Trump's political position. Okay? Because he's been under siege. His foreign policy objectives have been stymied at every level by his domestic opposition. Okay? So I wasn't talking geostrategically, and I didn't really want to talk about North Korea in the wins. But I think you may be new, so I've talked about this at length for weeks on end, that geostrategically the Russians and the North Koreans win tremendously here. They're absolutely the big winners. China to a lesser extent, certainly, but Russia is the big winner, because they're the ones that brokered the deal behind the scenes diplomatically, and they're the ones that are going to bring pipelines and electricity and build the train lines and all that shit. They're the ones that are going to truly benefit from all. So, I mean, believe me, Alexei Miller, the CEO of Gazprom, is not upset by what's happening. Okay, so, I don't for a minute believe that Bolton wasn't honestly trying to scuttle those talks. That's why he wasn't at the summit, and it's why he was sent to the Kremlin. And I think he was sent to the Kremlin for a number of reasons. One, I need you to do this. You need to go and you need to talk to Putin, right? And because one, I need you to do it and get me the measure of the man. Because if Bolton can walk away with a meeting with Putin and give Trump, a positive assessment of Putin that he didn't have previously, because that's what this meeting is really all about. Then it would change that. I mean, if he can do that, then that's a major hurdle to overcome. And then the other thing is the freaking win by having everybody in the opposition, both the never-Trumpers and the neocons and the left, go completely nuts. That John Bolton is now a Kremlin stooge. He was sidelined at the North Korean summit. He was not, wasn't he? I thought he wasn't in a prominent position or prominent role, if I remember correctly. I could misremember. And believe me, there's still a lot of ways that can go wrong. It's not over yet. It's not like it's a done deal that we're going to have peace in North Korea. Peace on the Korean Peninsula. We're much farther along than we were in the past. And I'm going to continue to be properly skeptical of every step in the negotiation process. Yep. And Bolton is now neutered. Yep. It's great. Awesome. And now we're going to go into the NATO summit where Trump is going to try and put the screws to Angela Merkel. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be quite fascinating to watch to see how this plays out. Because the NATO summit being a few days, on the 11th and the 12th, you've got Erdogan's going to be there. We're desperately trying to get them to not buy S-400s. Then, now the thing is, don't buy them, but don't use them. Going to spend $5 billion on a bunch of S-400s and not use them? Is he out of his mind? So, if Bolton, I cynical skeptic, I understand that perspective, and I'm willing to entertain it, and I have entertained it many times in the past. I'm not convinced on that. I think that is one certainly, and was saddled with Bolton as a threat. And he's making the best of the situation. Okay. WDM. LBJ was working with enemies. I'd rather have him on the inside pissing. I'd rather have him on the inside pissing out than the outside pissing in. Imagine what Bolton would be saying if we weren't inside. Fair enough. Exactly. It does nobody any good to always look at things from the good side of the ledger, the hopeful side of the ledger. I'm inherently hopeful about all of this. Don't misunderstand my position when it comes to that. I'm not. I'm not. What do you call? I'm not pessimistic about this. I'm actually quite optimistic, and I tend to be optimistic about this. Are we dropping we dropping carrier here? I tend to be more optimistic than I probably should be. Okay? And so ultimately, I would rather, in a sense, kind of force myself to take an overly pessimistic perspective, right? Even though my instincts are telling me, no, I think everything's going to work out, but here's how it can go wrong. And because I am naturally kind of worrywart, I will go. I had some a bunch of drop frames for a little while, so it should be better now because I'm watching the stream health from my end. So. Evening, Tony. How are you? It's been a while. So while I understand the idea of it being of Bolton being put in there as the big scary guy to get everybody to I'm not sure I buy that because it's very obvious that it could be something far more sinister, far more complicated than that. That's all. An optimist with experience, yes, because I've watched this shit go badly many times. I didn't really talk about Merkel very much, to be ultimately. I just think that the NATO summit's going to be, yeah, we had about 30 seconds worth of drop frames. I'm not sure. Most likely, Neil was downloading something hard and killed my bandwidth for me. I think that the NATO summit is going to be very important. It's going to set the stage for the Putin-Trump summit perfectly. I think that's why Trump was pushing for a summit with Putin in July as quickly as possible, because I think he's going to do something major at the NATO summit. Okay, and it could be as much as, I don't know that he's going to pull out of NATO, but it's going to be something big. And I also expect him to try and bribe Turkey in some way to say that keep them back in the fold. I don't consider Larry Kudlow the ultimate free trader. I'm the ultimate free trader. Larry Kudlow is a Keynesian monetarist. It's just another form of Keynesian. I like Larry. He's kind of a couch pillow, but he's always been a bit of a trade war kind of guy. I mean, Trump has been signaling that he's going to be a trade war, that he was going to go full on trade war since he was candidate. Why is anybody? No one should be surprised by this. Trump made it abundantly clear, and I said this to everyone back then, and you can go read the historical record on this. Go check out the Periscopes. It's there. I said Trump is a mercantilist. I said it in my old newsletter when I was working for Newsmax, and I've said it in my current newsletter. Trump is a mercantilist. He's going to be a mixture of good and bad. It's going to be fun to watch. He's going to blow shit up. He's going to do things. Not everything he does is going to be good. Not everything he will not be able to pull a win out of everything. He will try, and that's to his credit, but it is what it is. And it's fine. He's Loki. That's what we hired him for. I'm okay with that. I'm okay to criticize him when I don't think he's doing the right thing, and I think it's and I'll praise him when he does things that I like. For the most part, on domestic policy, I'm happy as a clam. I really am. I don't really care. I mean, to me, the immigration issue, as far as the wall is concerned, is less important than other things. I think that he's going pushing in the right, all the right buttons in the right direction in order to, and yes, the summit's on the 11th and the 12th, the NATO summit, and then Putin on the 6th. I think that he's pushing all the right buttons in terms of unfucking the American domestic policy situation in order to obviate a lot of the immigration problems. Right. All of Trump's talk about China on the campaign trail should have been a hint that he was planning on trade wars. The big thing is his full-on desire to destroy Germany. That's the big one. And the more I watch all of this stuff play out, the more I realize that I'm completely convinced that most of even his Iran policy is about Germany. So, I mean, I really do think that this is all about bringing Germany to heel. That Trump at a certain level understands that Germany is the country that is at the center of all of these things. That they're effectively internal mercantilists within the EU. And they're lording it over the entire EU and creating this tyrannical, insane, Byzantine, Kafkaesque nightmare that is the EU, and using that to continue to effectively subjugate all of Europe, while at the same time pluck cheap oil and gas out of the Iranians and ensure that the WTO and all of the trade deals and all of that stuff are all in Germany's favor at the expense of the United States. Trump wants to get rid of Merkel. Oh, he's absolutely going to get yeah. No, cynical skeptic, I agree with you. He wants to get rid of Merkel. It's not just get rid of Merkel. It's actually blow up the EU, because you understand that from the moment he was elected, the Globo homos, or whatever the hell you want to call them, the Bilderberg, Soros set, whatever you want, the Davos crowd. I actually like the Davos crowd the best. The Davos crowd threw their weight behind Angela Merkel. Remember, there was all those things that she's now the leader of the free world and Trump is a free Nazi and all of this stuff. That was all. And I'm sure that Trump took one look at that and went, "Oh yeah, you think that? Fine. We're going to take Angela down, and this is how we're going to do it." His goal is to blow up the EU is going to blow itself up, Tony. It's already in the process. It's not going to stop because there's no political solution to the EU's fundamental problems, which is the structure of the euro. The fact that all of the countries still want to be able to retain their own sovereign central banks to issue sovereign debt without any control, effectively with one credit rating, which is Germany's, backing everybody's up. It doesn't make any sense. You can't have one exchange rate for the world and 28 countries issuing debt based on one exchange rate. It doesn't make any sense. Trump is loyal to Farage and Brexit. Trump understands that all of these populist movements like his and Brexit and Italy and Viktor Orban in Hungary and even the Law and Justice Party in Poland and others, that all of them are trying to resist the tyrannical thing that is the EU. And because the EU is the model for what they want to do with the rest of the freaking world. I have not seen Ted Malloch's interview on the BBC. Cynical. Poland. And Poland's very important to him. And it should be. And understand that part of Trump's opposition to Nord Stream 2 was about securing Poland. Gas flows that Germany would not be able to shut off the gas to Poland to get Poland to heal politically. Right? I mean, that was what was going on. And now we come out today. So the last dividend about to this point, the last pre-summit dividend, is the announcement this morning by the German finance minister that the U.S., they've been told that the U.S. is not going to impose sanctions on companies doing business over Nord Stream 2, which tells me that there's a deal in place to ensure the future of that Germany will not be able to control the taps for Russian gas to distribute to the rest of Europe. That's what he means when he's talking about energy security. He's not talking about the Russians bringing them more gas. I don't think Trump cares about that. I think what Trump cares about is Germany having the political control over energy policy for the entire EU. And I made this point last year in a blog post. And which no one read because no one was reading my work at that point. But I made this point last year Now, I didn't tie it to that's what Trump is going to do in order to try and break up the EU. I think that that's another issue. I think that's another issue entirely. But I think that Angela Merkel and Germany's position within the EU is kind of like a metaphor for the swamp here in the. It's like for him, it's analogous to the swamp in the United States. You break Merkel and to a lesser extent Macron, and you effectively break the technocratic hold and the corruption, the endemic corruption from Juncker and Tusk and all those within the EU and the European Commission. You destroy them, because once you start attacking the sovereign debt quality, okay, once you start attacking at this level, that kind of political unrest and the trade and the trade disrupt, the potential trade disruption and everything else, you're now talking about creating on purpose a super cycle spike in the dollar to destroy the freaking euro. Now, he's going to have a bigger problem when that blows back on the American banks, which are already weak at this point. And now everybody's now starting to get worried about what's going on with Deutsche Bank and the fact that now we got major banks all failing stress tests. Not that those things weren't a fucking farce in the first place, but now it's official. Now they're starting to fail stress tests again. With the Fed having just barely taken the punch bowl. Ooh. Tie it all together. See where things... Look at how this is all coming together. I don't know that Trump is thinking about all of this stuff at the same time. I don't know. He might be. Might not care. Because at the end of the day, he's Loki. So I honestly think that there's a deal to... I know that Putin and Merkel discussed gas flows from Ukraine after the current deal with Naftagaz, between Naftagaz and Gazprom, gets finished. Okay? Which is the end of 2019, when Nord Stream 2 is supposed to come online. The biggest worry for everybody is that Poland will not be able to get gas from the old Ukrainian pipelines in 2020. So that's why the Poles are now starting up a new pipeline with Finland, right? To bring in a little bit of gas directly into Poland. Fine. Notice how Trump is now backed off on Nord Stream 2. And that most of the opposition to Nord Stream 2 in recent weeks has all come from unnamed State Department. Or he put it all in Heather Nauert's mouth, out of the State Department. Notice that. It's not come out of Trump. Okay? So, I find that more interesting. And I think that we're not going to get much movement on Ukraine. Arms control. I don't think that's going to be it. I don't think that's going to be here. I think this is going to be about Syria. I think this is going to be about laying the groundwork for the grand bargain in the Middle East. And you'll be surprised what comes out of it. You'll be surprised what he gives up. He's already giving up southwestern Syria, which was a red line for Israel. I think he's either going to... I don't know what happens at the NATO summit at this point. It's too hard for me to handicap. I'm honestly not sure what's going to happen. Yeah, with Putin, I'll be surprised. I'm not going to be. I think a lot of people will be surprised as to what they actually agree to, what substantively will happen. We're going to probably almost positive that we're going to get our troops removed from Al-Tanf, and that the Syrians are going to get that area back, and the radicals that we've been training down there, they're either going to get slaughtered or scattered. I think that's one. I think Nord Stream 2 will settle itself, and I think that it already has effectively settled itself. No, that's right. He didn't. The UK is a complete mess, right? And they're the ones, and it's obvious at this point that he knows that it was that most of Russiagate has come out of MI6, the British government, and that they're desperate to try and keep you on their keep him on his heels that way. It's not working. He doesn't give a shit. So it's going to be interesting. There will be no movement on Crimea, by the way. No, Europe will have to admit to Crimea first. It will be a real challenge, but I think he can start to declare victory and leave. Remember, plenty of time between now and July 16th, between now and 2.5 weeks, for the Syrian army to close out Daraa and start working on Idlib. We're not even up there. The big one's going to be Al-Tanf. He'll be able to say, because the Syrian army is also working on the last ISIS stronghold west of the Euphrates River in western Deir ez-Zor. Therefore, that's taken out, and Daraa is taken out, then there's no need for Al-Tanf anymore. And we can walk away from that. And we can declare victory and leave. Say, look, we did our job. We got rid of ISIS. Now we're going to start the process. But once we start that process, then the neocons are going to have to start and the liberal interventionists and the media and the deep state are going to have to keep making the argument, well, why do we need to be east of the Euphrates River? What are we doing building 17 bases in eastern Syria? What the fuck are we there for? The Kurds are now, what, to protect Kurdish independence? The Kurds are negotiating with Damascus. They're sitting down at the Astana peace talks now. There's still going to be, Idlib is going to be the big fight west of the Euphrates River. There's no doubt that there's still a lot of work to do there. But once the Tiger forces are shifted back north, up there, that should also start to fall apart really quick. Because at that point, it becomes, where does Erdogan fall? Right? On what side does Erdogan fall? And if you want my honest opinion, I think Erdogan is done with the United States. And I don't think that he trusts Trump any more than he trusts anybody else at this point. And, in some ways, when you really stop to think about what's happening, Trump might have torn up the JCPOA for the reason of pushing people away. Not saying that I agree with this, but I'm just starting to spitball this one. Think about it this way. I don't know if I'm right about that. I certainly don't think I'm right about this. Think about it this way. You tear up the Iran nuclear deal. Puts pressure on Germany. It pushes them to change. It pushes everybody to shit or get off the pot, and now force relationships to change. Right? Forces Turkey to change. It forces Turkey to decide where they're going to be and all. Right? It creates, and then it also does what everybody who complained, including myself, who complained that by tearing up this agreement, it proves that the Americans are not agreement capable, right? You can sign a deal with them with one administration, but the next administration comes in, doesn't like the deal, and they tear it up. So how can you sign a long-term agreement with the Americans when they're constantly tearing up, when they're constantly changing gears every 4 years, right? It's a fair point. So how much leverage is Trump going to have over Erdogan at the NATO summit? And he knows it. And so it may be at this point that Trump tries the unthinkable, which is to go back to what User 13 said to me in the chat at the beginning of this live stream. right? So I don't know. We'll see. So WDM, the Trump might want to drag this Syria thing out because the deep state and the bad guys in the Pentagon are looking worse the longer it goes on. Yeah, but at some point it's got to end. Oh, which was what? What did she say? What did she say originally? Which is what she said originally, which that wouldn't be surprised that Trump pulls out of NATO and says, well, we'll work with you whenever you want, but you guys have now got your own security infrastructure. Anymore. I know that most people don't understand Syria, but they do understand that they want our troops to come home. And if they understood just how many troops we had there, and if Trump starts talking about the size of our commitment there, that's a dead giveaway. Dead giveaway that he wants to pull our guys out. When we get actual real numbers, not the bullshit numbers that the DOD puts out, but real numbers, far closer to like 5,000 or 6,000, if not more, than the 800 or 1,000 we admit to. Parted. So the problem with WDM, the problem with the whole idea of dragging this thing out, and making them look worse, I don't think he's doing that. I think that they're trying to drag it out in order to try and continue the policy that has been in place and try and manufacture a win. Down, they're down 34-0. There's 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, but we can score 5 times. No, really, we can score 5 times. Really. False flag after 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 false flag. Right? Okay. We can continue doing this. Trump will just continue. Yeah, he will just continue to whitewash his hands of all of it as much as possible, and then say, yeah. Okay. See what we get for continuing to play around and muck around in Syria and Afghanistan and the rest of these places. Lots of cost. Kids come home in body bags. It's terrible. It's a tragedy. Awful. Huge. I mean, seriously. All right. That's about an hour. I think that's a show. Anybody got any final questions before I pop off? So, if you liked what you heard tonight, I know, minus the invective maybe, please give us a subscribe. We've crossed 300 people. That's pretty awesome actually, but love to see those numbers rise. Follow me on YouTube. We're just across the 300 threshold, which is awesome. And give a like, give a subscribe. Please retweet this as much as possible. Regarding the Space Force, I got the impression that Trump wants to fund this ludicrous venture in order to give money to the MIC without being forced to start more wars than the current ones. It's a thought. It's a good thought, actually. Cynical. It's a good thought, and it's fair. I think that's probably more likely than anything else. Deep State does what next? It continues to double down domestically on deepening the divisions between the factions within the United States. That's the big one. That's where they go next. Look for patches. The Space Force already exists. Probably. We're not. But you know what the funny part about all that is? We're not sending a person into space without a Russian rocket engine. Oh, and by the way, John Bolton is a Kremlin Stooge. Y'all take care. You have a great night. Keep your stick on the ice.